Hey, what's going on, Trojan family? Welcome back to the USC LAFB show here on the LAFB network. We are Los Angeles Sports. This is your daily dose of USC Trojans news. A lot to catch up on, family. Hope everyone had a fantastic weekend. My weekend is always typically Sunday and Monday. So I know officially we've been back for the work week for an entire day since this, but for me, got a lot to catch up on with you guys. Going to be releasing a few videos here over the next kind of 48 hours, maybe 2 a day, just because I want to break them down a little bit more. But the big kind of news right now, heading in to Big Ten Media Days next week, Rivals just released their updated rankings for the upcoming season. Now, all of the recruiting websites typically do this. I don't know the exact number, but it seems like a few times over the cycle. There's kind of the initial, the middle, and then almost like leading up to signing day, a little bit of a small update. So, this does happen. This is also a little different because of On3 and Rivals merging, which I think is why it happened right now, obviously. So that had, with them merging, they were kind of collectively combining their recruiting rankings. Also, they're combining their teams of who their lead recruiting analysts and ranking designers, if you will, are, and kind of coming to terms on how they rank guys. Because of the 4 original, now there's only 3 left since of the merger. On3 typically was quite a bit different than the other 3. It seemed like for the most part, not on every player. Some players were but there were specifically on West Coast players. I think it's been well documented that On3 never really had a true West Coast evaluator. And so there were definitely a lot of West Coast guys that their rankings on On3 were completely different than where they were on 24/7, ESPN, and Rivals. So it's kind of like, how do they marry those two together? And so their latest top 300 just released, I think met with probably quite a few criticism. I'm going to drop another video here soon just saying where all of USC's recruiting class lands. So, for instance, Luke Wafel jumps into the top 10 total. He becomes a 5-star, gets his 5th star from Rivals. So hats off to him, and obviously that's a huge accomplishment and one for the USC class. But a lot of the top players for USC's class dropped in rankings within the Rivals ecosystem. So I'm going to do another overarching video kind of on all of that and where kind of the players sit and just my thoughts overall on these kind of recruiting rankings. But I wanted to focus right now on the quarterback position because it's a very interesting thing. And there's all these conspiracies. I'm not a big conspiracy guy. There's all these conspiracies that like, hey, maybe certain programs actually pay these recruiting websites. Maybe there's agents try to pay to kind of pump up some stars for kids, which in turn will allow them to get bigger NIL deals. I mean, I don't think programs should, and I don't think many do actually use these recruiting sites. They should be making their own evaluations. If they're using On3, Rivals, 24/7, ESPN to make their evaluations, then you've got bigger problems. But safe to say if a guy's a consensus 5-star, he's going to probably have a little bit more leverage or buying power in terms of NIL negotiations versus like a 3-star. But again, programs hopefully are making their own evaluations. I've talked to Coach Henney a bunch at USC about like, yeah, these guys don't know what they're doing. Like we have our own board of who we look at. Like we don't even pay attention to any of these sites. This is more for fans, but it's a big thing for these kids who work their tails off. And when you get rewarded as a 5-star from some of these big monster media sites, I mean, think about this. These are 15, 16, 17-year-old kids that all of a sudden are getting national recognition. And so it's a big deal for them. And so the latest of these, and I want to preface this first, like all these kids are working their tails off. And so based on what I know, there's no reason any of these kids should receive any ill will if they go up or down or any of that. Like obviously, their play, you have to criticize their play if, they didn't play well, but I don't think anyone needs to be attacking like, man, how did this guy shoot up the ranking? So I'm prefacing that because I'm going to talk specifically about Jonas Williams, USC quarterback, and Oregon commit Bryson Beaver. And I don't want there to be any shade towards Bryson Beaver. Obviously, the kid's working his tail off. He's had a great summer circuit, and so This is nothing to him specifically, but it is around his situation because it is very interesting. So Jonas Williams, and I'll preface it like this. Jonas Williams, highly touted, obviously we know, recruit out of Illinois, 4-star recruit. Most of the recruiting sites, I believe, had him in that kind of top 15, top 10 fringe. Almost all of them under composite rankings, industry rankings, were all top 10. I believe On3 at the time, now Rivals, On3 had him at 7, I want to say, was where they actually had his evaluation. Being from Illinois, he was committed to Oregon at the time of their, I think his ranking came out before he committed, but then he committed to Oregon. And then we all know he flipped to USC recently and now has been a part of this 2026 historic class. Since that time, there's been no actual football played. There's these 7-on-7, Elite 11, all these different camps or combines or whatever you want to call them. And so, with their new rankings, they now dropped Jonas Williams out of the top 10. I believe now, I don't want to mistake it. Let me just real quick here. I had it in front of me, so I want to make sure I'm not saying incorrectly. So they now have him at 12. Industry rankings put him at 10. You see 24/7 Sports has him at 13. ESPN has him as high as 3. Don't have a ton of qualms with this, honestly. Guys are going to rise and fall. And going from 7 to 12, I don't think that is like a huge issue. I don't agree with it. I think he's a better quarterback than that. You watch the game tape, you watch what he did last year, and it pops off the chart to me. I think he had a good circuit during the summer. There was a day that he was the best quarterback in the circuit. So I don't see kind of how he fell, but, it is what it is. 5 spots. Who really cares? The real interesting one now is Bryson Beaver. So again, not anything bad about the kid. He's a Cali kid. Plays high school football at Vista Marietta, which I believe is where good friend Sua Cravens went. But here is a kid who was a 3-star on the initial evaluations. That was based on his fall tape of last year. Based on actual gameplay, was a 3-star. He's committed to Boise State. It's kind of where, there's really no chatter. Well, it's well documented. We've talked about it. Everyone knows about it. Oregon was just missing on quarterbacks, right? Jared Curtis chooses Georgia. At the time, Ryder Lyons still hadn't committed, but it was starting to trend like he was not going to be their guy, and he was trending towards BYU. We know, obviously, Jonas Williams had already flipped at that point. So then they go after Bryson Beaver. Bryson Beaver decommits from Boise State and ends up flipping to Oregon shortly thereafter. Upon his flip, I don't know the exact timeline, but almost immediately, On3 is kind of saying 4-star. Now, it's hard because once they update the rankings, you don't have, unless you have screenshots. So I don't want to put out there that, hey, it just immediately happened. I know a lot of people will say that. I don't know for sure, but for sure he was a 3-star and then became a 4-star shortly, kind of in that time frame. Great, is what it is. No big deal. Still at that time, he was I believe On3 had him as the 40th ranked quarterback. 40th ranked quarterback. Now with their new rankings that just came out, he remained a 4-star, but he is now the 5th ranked quarterback. All indications are had a great summer program at the Elite 11, at all these camps, has elite arm strength. I understand all of that. That, to me, warrants an upgrade. You perform well at these camps. You see some of the intangibles, the arm talent, the athleticism. Yeah, you should kind of move up a little bit because we're all going. The recruiting game is all projection, right? It's all projecting guys and where they're lie within thousands of players in a database. So there's not going to be any perfect science. You should move up a bit. But moving up roughly 35 spots, jumping 30 34 other quarterbacks, most of which also were on these circuits, also probably performing well. That is interesting to me because that is a meteoric jump. Meteoric jump. Now, I tweeted out kind of after those came out, just kind of, oh, interesting, this huge jump. And this is what I love about social media is people you've never talked to, well, you can kind of engage with and communicate with. So Charles Power, who's the director of scouting and rankings at Rivals, actually responded back, and I'll just read it to you. I'll put it up here on the screen too. But he said, here's missing context. Rivals currently has Jonas Williams ranked the highest of anyone, which, unless I'm reading it wrong, that's actually not true because ESPN has him at 3, while Rivals has him at 12 and 247 at 13. So I don't believe that is accurate, but neither here nor there. We watched him throw for a combined 10 days over the past few months and view this as an accurate representation of where he falls into the QB group heading into the senior season. Bryson Beaver's imminent rankings rise was heavily forecasted in our Elite 11 finals coverage. He proved to be one of the top arm talents in the cycle, alongside Williams and 18 of the other top QBs. This was before he committed to Oregon. A prospect making a big rankings rise based on recent performance isn't a conspiracy. These are high school football players who emerge and develop at different rates. Many, if not most, future high draft picks move up in the rankings as upperclassmen, often in a big way. Overall, I agree. 100%. I mean, these are young players that are growing into their bodies. I mean, these rankings should change. They should not be set in stone when they're created as sophomores. 1,000%. And we've seen collegiately how quickly things can change. I mean, I've talked about it ad nauseum, I feel like, just the last 2 NFL drafts. When you look at the top quarterback taken, or quarterbacks within the top. Jaden Daniels, right? ASU, good quarterback, talented, would have been probably a mid to late round pick. Transfer to LSU, lightning in a bottle, wins the Heisman, second overall pick. 1 season, meteoric rise. Same thing happened last year. Cam Ward, good quarterback at Washington State, probably would have been a 5th or 6th round pick. Transfers to Miami, fantastic season, wins the Heisman, first overall pick. 1 year, meteoric rise. So I totally agree, things can shift quickly. However, those were real football games played against real teams with pads, with a pass rush, all that. And you saw the rise. This was a 35 place rise based on 3 months of summer camp, non-padded drills, essentially, and flag football. So I think you can use some of these camps to project, but to use them as a catapult, I don't understand how you can do that, because then it tells me 2 things. One, your initial evaluation of the player from last fall season was either just so bad or actually non-existent, like you just kind of took someone else's word for it when you actually made that a 3-star 40th overall quarterback evaluation based on the junior film. So there's that. Or you just value camp production a lot more than actual football production. Or there's the conspiracy that, hey, some programs are paying for rankings. I'm not going to go that far. I'm not a conspiracy guy. But there is something. Like, you see what I'm saying, guys? Like, and this is not trying to be woe is me, USC gets digged and this and that. Like, I don't really want to buy into that too much. Like, I'm trying to be subjective but it is certainly just this specific incidence is pretty wild. And thinking even back to last year, so sticking with USC. If you guys remember, Julian Lewis, who committed to USC way early in the process, was a 5-star. after being committed for a while, after some of these summer camps, ends up dropping to a 4-star and falling in the rankings. Husong Longstreet during that time ended up rising a little bit. Well, then the flip happens. It's too late to make any changes because it was so late in the process, pretty much a few weeks before signing day. I'm not saying that would have changed things, but just kind of another interesting coincidence, I guess, as it pertains to USC specifically. So let me know what you guys think. I've probably already belabored this too much, but it's very interesting when you see that kind of jump. And, things are going to happen. And I think, too, the one big outlier here is the fact that there was a merger, right? On3 and Rivals are combining forces, combining their recruiting and ranking philosophies. And so there was going to be some big shifts, right? Oh, I forgot. The one last thing I did want to say, because these ranking sites, again, are not the Bible, right? I mean, there's a ton of players they got to evaluate, and I respect all those guys so much with all they have to do. But they're going to make mistakes. There's going to be whiffs and whatever. So, but one really easy way to truly kind of look at really where a guy's evaluation is the school's recruiting him, right? That should be a good indication of like, okay, the schools are doing their own evaluations, the programs, the coaches. So Jonas Williams, 30 offers. 30 offers. A lot of the big players, right? Obviously, SC, Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Iowa, Michigan State, Purdue, Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, Washington, Illinois, Oklahoma, Louisville, Wisconsin. Like, I can go down the list, but most of the big players at B for this talented kid. Ole Miss, Missouri. When you look at Bryson Beaver, again, I don't want to project negatively on him, but just looking at the recruiting, he had 10 total offers. His big ones were Oregon, Ole Miss, Alabama, LSU. Definitely good programs. They obviously saw something. Auburn. The other 5, Boise State, Nevada, San Jose State, Florida Atlantic, and Northern Arizona. So I'm not trying to say that to paint any negative light, but that should give some indication of like the college football landscape's evaluation of a player. And so that versus a recruiting website, and again, obviously, this is based on their newest evaluations, but again, it's of summer camps. No pads, no pass rush, no real scheme. Just running drills in the gym, essentially, but on the field. I don't know. Take it for what you guys want. I know they've been met with a lot of criticism. I do truly appreciate that Charles responded. I think that's pretty good. I think that's one of the cool things about social media is we can have that interactions here. So all respect. I mean, tough job to do. So none of this is any trying to, be negatively indicative on anyone. This is kind of my sentiment on where this industry is interesting and where it can be wrong and where the evaluation process doesn't necessarily, from the outside, again, I'm not in these rooms, but from the outside, doesn't necessarily seem like it's even across the board, all things being equal. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it does not matter. USC's class, I think, is great. Because of these new rankings, they actually dropped from 1 to 2. Georgia jumped them now in the rankings. I don't think it matters. USC loves their class. I love their class. We'll see. We ultimately got to see how it plays out on the field. But want to jump on here. I probably talked too long already, but just wanted to lay my thoughts out because I just thought that was so interesting when I first saw that come out. I think it was yesterday. So I'll have a few more videos up kind of about these rankings, where all of USC's commits kind of fall in line with that, among other things. So thank you as always for riding with me here on the USC LAFB show. If you have not already, please hit that like and subscribe button. Become a member if you want. Some of your membership is going to go to good causes here in Los Angeles, supporting youth sports. We'll have plenty more information on that as our partnerships continue to build, but a portion of your membership donation goes to help youth initiatives here in Los Angeles. Thank you as always for tuning in. As always,